Welcome to the third episode in a Legendarium series about Rome's bloodiest family. In part 3, A New Alexander, we will talk about the reign of Emperor Caracalla. Very early in his reign, Caracalla became involved in a bitter feud with his brother and co-emperor Geta, which ultimately ended with Caracalla murdering Geta. While Caracalla's reign was not without accomplishments, his good deeds were overshadowed not only by his fratricide, but by the massacres that came in the wake of Geta's murder. When Emperor Septimius Severus died in 211 AD, he gave his sons 3 pieces of advice: agree with each other, give money to the soldiers, and scorn all other men. While his sons Caracalla and Geta had little trouble following the second 2 pieces of advice, there was little chance of them doing the first. At the age of 23 and 22 respectively, Caracalla and Geta already had a long history of bitter rivalry, one that only became much worse because Geta's powerful mother Julia Domna had convinced the aging Septimius to make the brothers co-emperors. Before then, Caracalla had likely been intended as sole heir and emperor after the death of Septimius. So now, not only did Caracalla view his brother Geta as a personal rival, but a political rival as well. As joint rulers, the brothers took their father's ashes back to Rome. It would be the last act of rulership they could perform peacefully together. Indeed, the 2 brothers could only coexist in the imperial palace together by dividing it in 2, with each part housing its own main entrance and all interconnecting doors and passages blocked off. However, both brothers already had their own followings, including senators, charioteers, and public officials. The men who joined the entourages of Caracalla and Geta were often ambitious for public office. Needless to say, they wanted their man to be successful. The rivalry between the co-emperors soon affected business of state. Both Caracalla and Geta interfered with court cases to win favorable rulings for their followers. After some months, Caracalla and Geta discussed dividing the empire between them as the only way to preserve peace. Geta would have Asia, and Caracalla would have Europe and Northwest Africa. Julia Domna, perhaps fearing civil war between her 2 sons, put a stop to the plan. She asked the brothers how, if they wished to divide the empire, they planned to divide their mother. With the collapse of this scheme, Caracalla became desperate. Geta was guarded by his followers at all times, yet Caracalla created a moment when his brother was unprotected. Caracalla called another meeting between him, Geta, and their mother Julia Domna. When Geta arrived, Caracalla's men stabbed Geta repeatedly. Geta collapsed into his mother's arms as he died, screaming, "Mother that bore me! Mother that bore me! Help! I am being murdered!" Though he now had sole power, Caracalla was not yet safe. Geta had many powerful friends, including Rome's literary establishment. After murdering his brother, Caracalla rushed to the Praetorian Guard, claiming that Geta tried to murder him. We have no way to know for sure if there was any truth to this claim or not, but Caracalla convinced the troops by giving them a hefty bribe. With their palms freshly greased, the Praetorians happily agreed to purge Geta's supporters. In the weeks that followed in early 212, the Praetorians stormed through the city. Senators, provincial governors, palace servants, soldiers, and charioteers were murdered as they ate at their tables, went to the public baths, and walked in the streets. Among the dead was Cornificia, elderly daughter of Marcus Aurelius, who was murdered for the crime of mourning the death of Geta. About 20,000 people were murdered. Even afterwards, Caracalla defaced any public image of his brother, banned public observances of his birthday, and tore down his statues. Though this massacre secured Caracalla's power, he remained hated by the people of Rome for the rest of his reign, not surprisingly. Indeed, Caracalla grew so fearful of remaining in Rome that he left in 213 on a grand tour of the empire. He soon joined the soldiers protecting the German frontier. Caracalla won the soldiers' admiration by marching alongside them on foot, eating ordinary food, and grinding his own barley flour. Like his father Septimius, Caracalla needed the army to cow not only the Senate, but the people of Rome as well. To ensure their support, he gave them an astonishing 50% raise. Even better, during the summer of 213, Caracalla won a series of victories over the Germanic nations. Indeed, the Senate was impressed enough to award Caracalla the title of Germanicus Maximus. During his reign, Roman workers completed a vast new bathing complex in Rome that became known as the Baths of Caracalla. The emperor dedicated the bath in 216, though its construction likely began during the reign of his father, Septimius Severus. It included water tanks, a stadium, exercise yards, gardens, lecture halls, and libraries. The massive building used brick and concrete, but also had extraordinary design. Its domed hot room alone was almost as large as the Pantheon, and much taller. The cold room included a vaulted roof supported on a grid of iron bars welded together. Mosaic floors, marble veneers on the walls, and painted stucco on the vaults made for a wonderful interior. Hoping to win more glory, Caracalla and his retinue headed to Asia. Having won some minor victories in Germany, Caracalla now fancied himself to be Alexander the Great. He began keeping elephants and their trainers in his entourage, just like Alexander. He put up statues of the Macedonian conqueror wherever he went. Caracalla even issued coins with Alexander's face on one side and Caracalla's on the other. Caracalla even began dressing like Alexander and choosing his travel routes based on Alexander's marches. By the winter of 214 to 215, Caracalla arrived in Alexandria, the Egyptian city named after the great conqueror and second largest of the empire. There, Caracalla visited Alexander's tomb, placing his purple cloak and imperial regalia upon the tomb. However, the murder of his brother Geta followed him even there. Citizens in Alexandria staged protests against Caracalla and the murder of Geta. This inflamed all of Caracalla's anger and fear. As in Rome, he exacted a horrible revenge. The emperor lured the young men of the city out with promises of imperial cash. When they arrived in the agora, the young men were rounded up by Caracalla's soldiers and chopped to death. The killing soon spread to other parts of the city, with people again dying at their dinner tables and in the streets. Thousands died in Alexandria by the time the massacre finally ended. Yet Caracalla still suffered from insomnia. Some even reported that he suffered dreams where he endured visits from his father's ghost. Happiest with the army and when at war, Caracalla tried to forget his guilt and troubles by preparing for war against Parthia, which had split in a civil conflict between two rival claimants to the throne. Caracalla took advantage by siding with one of the rivals, Artabanus V, even proposing marriage between himself and Artabanus's daughter to secure the alliance. While his supposed ally marched to war against his rival, Caracalla betrayed Artabanus, ravaged the countryside, and took control of the Tigris River. Caracalla spent the winter in Edessa, passing his time by hunting and joining chariot races. However, a conspiracy aimed at the unhinged and murderous emperor was being hatched in Rome. They recruited an ally in the new commander of the Praetorian Guard, Macrinus. The garrison commander in Rome, Flavius Maternianus, learned of a conspiracy against Caracalla's life. He sent word to the emperor through his mother, Julia Domna. However, word reached the emperor very slowly and ultimately too late. To this day, we don't know for sure if Julia Domna was stymied by slow communications or if she deliberately got word to her son slowly as revenge for the murder of Geta. Regardless of Julia Domna's motives, the murder of his brother finally caught up with Caracalla. Julius Martialis, a Praetorian officer, was chosen to carry out the murder of Caracalla. He bore the emperor a grudge because his brother had died, perhaps during the massacre at Alexandria. Both Macrinus and Martialis joined the party which accompanied Caracalla from Edessa to Carrhae on April 8, 217. When the emperor stopped the party to use the restroom, the rest of the bodyguard turned around to respect the emperor's privacy. Marcellus moved forward and killed Caracalla with a single sword thrust as Caracalla lowered his breeches. Marcellus was murdered as he attempted to flee. Caracalla was cremated and his ashes sent to his mother Julia Domna back in Rome. Macrinus, the Praetorian commander, proclaimed himself emperor. A man with no blood ties to the Severan dynasty had the throne. That should have been the end of the dynasty, but they would claw their way back to power. We'll see how in the next episode. That wraps things up for this installment of the Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.